excuses and we are running out of time.
Show us your faithfulness. Show us your trustworthiness. Show us your honesty. Prove us wrong. We desperately need you to prove us wrong. God help us all. If you fail to prove us wrong, God help us.
Hello, welcome to This World. Vladimir Omelyan joins us from Kiev, and he is currently on the front line fighting Russian troops.
We believe that the world should be ruled by democracies.
I was interviewing you on television a couple of weeks back.
That's right.
And you said, if you really want to understand Jerusalem, why don't you come here and see it?
And you came.
Here I am. Mass shooting after mass shooting after mass shooting. Why this cannot be fixed?
There are 425 million guns in the United States, which is more than the population.
The problem here is Trump has been able to make the argument that this is a political prosecution and that he's being singled out unfairly.
Defend our nation.
You are saying we could have a cure for cancer.
We'll have treatments for many cancers in this decade, and they're going to come from India.
Downside is that it could potentially wipe us out. But let's start with the upside first.
The upsides are absolutely enormous. The potential uses of this are almost unlimited.
I only discovered AutoGPTs about a week ago and started writing about them. And after I started writing about them, Jeff Bezos followed me on Twitter, and all kinds of crazy amounts of people have been contacting us.
The show where we get you the week's biggest stories from around this world. What is the India story? It's the story of the world's biggest democracy.
We are developing the road infrastructure. In the end of 24, it will be equivalent to the road infrastructure of USA.
We have now entered the growth phase. And I believe that the growth rate in India is going to be exponential.
Two narratives of Indian story which need to be brought center stage.
Every week,
Hi everyone, welcome to WION Live Broadcast from New York City. I'm Susan Tehrani. First, let's get you up to speed with the latest headlines for this hour. Former U.S. President Donald Trump is to appear at the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. in a few hours for 4 felony charges related to his alleged efforts to stay in power after the 2020 elections. China voices strong opposition to Taiwan's vice president's planned stop over the U.S. en route to Paraguay, says it resolutely opposes sneaky visits by Taiwan's independent separatists to the U.S. Supporters of Nigeria's ruling junta and civil society groups stage a march in the capital, namely against what they call foreign interference after the coup. Amid a spike in anti-France sentiments, protesters were seen waving the Russian flag. Turkey's inflation figures tick up in July to 47.83%, up sharply from 38.2%. The rise after 8 months of declaration comes on the back of a string of tax hikes introduced to fix a swelling budget deficit. And phase one of the Women's World Cup is over, and two-time world champions Germany will not be featured in the knockout stages after they failed to beat South Korea.
He comes across, Pop looks lows! Really loves them! Oh, yes!
Former President Donald Trump is set to be arraigned at a federal courthouse in Washington, D.C. this afternoon. He's accused of spreading lies and trying to overturn the 2020 presidential elections. He's also accused of orchestrating riots at the Capitol in an effort to hamper a peaceful transfer of power. Ahead of the hearing, workers put up barricades outside the federal courthouse in Washington, D.C., and in a few hours, the former president will be processed and taken into custody. Then he is expected to plead not guilty before being released. There's a lot at stake for the former president in the 2024 elections. In a way, this may be about personal freedom for him and not just his political future. Trump's latest indictment, in which he is charged with trying to overturn the 2020 election results, is probably the most serious of all the charges he's facing, but it's also the hardest to prove by prosecutors. The United States is gearing up for an election unlike any other in history. However, some say Trump's trial could run for years.
President Trump, it's hard to imagine that date holds, given sort of everything that has to happen between now and then. And frankly, the former president has a right to participate in his own defense, to prepare, to work with his lawyers, and to do that in a really fulsome way. And so I don't know how he does that with these three cases going on. And so it's not unusual for a federal case to really take, a number of years to resolve. And I don't think, I wouldn't be surprised if that happens here as well.
Under the U.S. judicial system, a person is innocent until proven guilty. So the ball is in the court of Jack Smith, the special counsel for the United States Department of Justice. The onus is on them to prove beyond doubt that Trump is guilty of promoting false claims that the elections were rigged and pressuring state and federal officials to alter the results. Despite the scale of the charges, many Republicans say they will vote for the GOP frontrunner, even if he's in jail. Trump says he's the target of a politicized Justice Department, and at his rallies, he says the charges are not just an attack on him, but his supporters too. His lead over Republican rivals only continues to grow despite his legal troubles. Donald Trump's political strength is well known. Even former President Barack Obama, in a private conversation with Joe Biden, warned him of Trump's clout. We now learn that during a meeting at the White House back in June, Obama promised to do all he could to help Biden get reelected. Trump's legal defense team is expected to argue that the indictment illegally criminalizes Trump's freedom of speech. Some of Trump's supporters believe the recent indictments were timed to distract the news from the Biden family's business dealings. With the DOJ hyper-focused on Trump, many wonder if there's a two-tier justice system. Okay, for more on this, we are being joined by senior journalist, author, and columnist Ray Locher from Washington, D.C. Ray, great to see you, and thanks for joining us.
You bet.
There are those that say this may be the most serious of all charges, but it may be the most difficult to prove as well. After all, part of this implies that the prosecutors would have to prove that Donald Trump himself didn't believe what he was saying, that the election was stolen. That's very hard, isn't it?
Well, in theory, yes. But remember, Donald Trump has been doing this for years. Before he surprisingly won the 2016 election, he was claiming in the weeks leading up to the election that the whole process was rigged and he was going to lose because it was rigged, and then he won, much to everyone's surprise. So this is not a new claim for him, and we should view these claims in that context.
And Ray, what happens perhaps after these trials? I mean, he could appeal, it could go all the way to the Supreme Court. It's far from over, really, despite the fact that it seems Jack Smith and his team want to, quote unquote, get it over with as soon as possible.
Look, everybody knows this is a lengthy process. If he wins the 2024 election, he could pardon himself. He could appoint a new attorney general who just drops all the cases. But assuming he does not win the election, this thing could drag on because that's the way that he does business. He delays in all of these court proceedings. I mean, this is someone who has been sued multiple times by his business associates. So, I mean, and he just delays things over and over again.
And Ray, I want to get your views on what some are saying that perhaps despite the fact that his poll numbers are going up on the Republican side and he may become the Republican nominee, it'll be hard for him to win a general. Although these are all hypotheticals, we have a long way to go. But that seems to be the sentiment among some analysts, at least.
Well, look, he's never won the majority of the popular vote in his two presidential elections. He lost to Hillary Clinton in the popular vote by 2.9 million. He lost to Joe Biden in 2020 by 7 million. This is not somebody who is rolling up a popular vote majority around the country. So you look at, this upcoming election in that context, and you can see that this is somebody who has an uphill battle to win a general election. What helps him is he's strong in certain states that have a number of electoral votes. That's how he won in 2016. That's how he came close to being reelected in 2020. And that's something that everyone has to take seriously.
Ray, it's great to talk to you. Thank you for joining us. And I look forward to speaking to you again very soon.
Thanks, Susan.
Israel's defense ministry says that the United States has approved the sale of a co-developed missile system to Finland. Having received the green light from Washington, Israel can complete the sale of the David's Sling to Finland in a $346 million deal. First, let's take a look at the capabilities of the David's Sling. The air defense system boasts of a large interception envelope. It effectively intercepts threats during saturation attacks. Precision hit-to-kill aim point selection is a key factor as well. The launcher carries up to 12 stunner interceptors launched in a near vertical orientation. Next, the benefit of David's Sling. Let's talk about that. Lethal hit-to-kill interceptor. It is a formidable air defense system. David's Sling boasts of a high probability of kill against a broad spectrum of current and projected air and missile defense threats. Plug-and-play insertion into fielded air and missile defense system provides battlefield advantages. Lastly, the air defense system has a next-generation multi-sensor seeker as well. All right, let's bring you back here in the United States, where the Pittsburgh synagogue shooter has been given the death penalty, killing 11 Jewish people back in 2018. A federal jury unanimously read the verdict, and he's due to be in court later today once again. This marks the first death penalty carried out under President Joe Biden's administration. The 50-year-old was convicted of all 63 charges against him in the October of 2018 Tree of Life synagogue attack, where members of 3 Jewish congregations had gathered for Sabbath at the synagogue to worship and to study. Of the 63 charges, 22 were capital offenses, and it was the deadliest anti-Semitic attack in the history of the United States. Investigation into the incident found that Bowers, the killer, used to spew hatred against Jews on the internet and also held white supremacist beliefs. He committed the crime after methodological planning. Despite the defense's emphasis on Bowers' difficult childhood and mental health, the prosecutors used the degree of his anti-Semitism as well as lack of any remorse to attain the highest punishment for the crime.
On October 27, 2018, Robert Bowers walked into the Tree of Life Synagogue in the Squirrel Hill neighborhood of Pittsburgh, and he murdered 11 innocent Jewish worshipers who had gathered to share together in the practice of their faith. He killed half of the people in that building. He murdered them because they were Jewish. He also shot 2 other congregants, and he tried to kill every other person in that building that day. On that day, now almost 5 years ago, he committed the worst anti-Semitic mass shooting in United States history.
The families of victims and survivors gathered during a press conference and said that, quote, justice has been served after the court sentence.
Today we received an immense embrace from the halls of justice around all of us to say that our government does not condone anti-Semitism in its most vile form that we've witnessed, and that we are embraced by a system that has supported, nurtured us, and upheld us, and made the point very clear. We have the right to practice our Judaism, and no one will ever take that right away from us.
Well, the India story has gotten a big thumbs up. This time, the U.S. brokerage giant Morgan Stanley, which has upgraded India's rating to overweight as shares valuation continues to ease in India. While upgrading India's rating to overweight, Morgan Stanley has raised India's ranking from the earlier 6th position. India is now the top-ranked, most preferred market among emerging markets. That's largely due to support of foreign inflows, macro stability, and positive earning outlooks. Meanwhile, the situation does not seem to be good for neighboring China. Morgan Stanley has downgraded the country to equal weight, arguing that China's market boom is possibly nearing its end. The downgrade comes at a time when post-COVID recovery has slowed in China. Poor global demand and West's de-risking strategy has led to a 12.4% fall in June exports, the lifeblood of China's economy. One major indicator can be the latest stress point for China household debt. China's household debt reached 63.5% of the gross domestic product, the GDP, in the April to June quarter. That's close to the 65% red line used by the International Monetary Fund as a warning point. All right, we'll talk about a relatable story for many of us. Here in the United States, a cab service and hailing one has become an everyday affair. However, you'll often hear customers complain about the high surge prices, be it in traffic jams, rain. Cab services often raise fares beyond belief. One such incident took place in New York when a man ended up paying $52 for a 4-kilometer ride. That's about 2 miles. Uber's increasing prices has left its own CEO, Dara Khosrowshahi, in shock. Stephen Levy, a journalist, had taken an Uber from downtown Manhattan to the West Side to interview Dara, and sounds like a regular day for a reporter. But Stephen ended up paying $52, including the driver's tip, for the 2.95-mile trip. That is approximately 4,300 rupees for a 4-kilometer ride. The issue was brought to the attention of Uber CEO Dara Khosrowshahi during the interview. Stephen asked Khosrowshahi to guess how much his 2.95-mile trip cost. The CEO responded, $20. When Levy told him that the actual price, he responded with, quote, "Oh my God, wow." Upon being questioned about Uber's pricing strategy, Dara attributed the high prices to the increased cost of labor, gas, and time. According to a report by Forbes, Uber's prices in the U.S. have increased at 4 times the rate of inflation from 2018 to 2022. Interestingly, Uber reported its first profit ever, earning $394 million in the first quarter of 2023. So if you are given a choice, what is the highest amount you are willing to pay for a 4-kilometer ride? Lionel Messi has clearly lived up to the hype with his performance on the pitch, as he is set to change the course of David Beckham's Inter Miami franchise. But his impact off the field has been ever more impressive. The 7-time World Player of the Year has brought big business to Major League Soccer, which is set to transform the sport in a country which has at times been somewhat resistant to the force of the global game. We break it down for you and all of the numbers of Messi effect in our next report.
I would like to introduce to you your number 10, Inter Miami's number 10, the best number 10 in the world, Lionel Andres Messi.
The man could have chosen to play anywhere in the world, but he picked the land of opportunity. It hasn't even been 2 weeks since his Inter Miami debut, and Messi has already brought about a seismic shift in American soccer.
Messi with Gazan off his line. Messi off the post, puts the follow in. Of course he did. 8 minutes in.
We believe certainly the magnitude of his decision really cannot be overstated, and for our league, it's a transformational moment, and I think we'll see over the next 3, 5, 10 years how it transformed Major League Soccer in the sport in our country. And when you think about it, the global soccer community and arguably sports fans throughout the world are focused on Inter Miami.
But how exactly is Messi conquering financial frontiers in the US? Let's take a look. Ticket prices on the secondary market for Messi's first few Inter Miami matches increased by more than 1,000%, from $29 to whopping $459. Since news of Messi's transfer, more team merchandise has been sold than the previous entirety of 2023.